police, they will be involved. Their CID unit, which is their criminal investigation division, they're housed right out of that same area over there, and so they will be involved. They may take the lead. I think all of that is going to be sorted out, but it's going to come down to either the Naval Police or the DC Police. I think the Naval Police will probably take the initial lead, though, Greg.
And the questions all remain the same. Again, we keep referring to it as a Navy Yard. What you're seeing on your screen there is some of the helicopter footage that we had from earlier today and some of the initial response. Right now, as we understand it, the scene is relatively quiet compared to what it was like only a few hours ago. This is the Naval Sea Systems Command headquarters. About 3,000 people, both active duty military and civilians, work in this area, and we're just now getting some more comments from some of the people inside the building that came face to face with the gunman. This is according to the Associated Press. One of the man's names is Todd Brundage. He's an executive assistant with Navy Sea Systems Command. He said he and other co-workers encountered the gunman in this long hallway of their building. We believe that's 197 on the 3rd floor. He describes the gunman as wearing all blue, but that's the only description that we have. And he says, again, this is Todd Brundage, that he just turned and started firing. Another executive and assistant, Terry Durham, with the same agency, said she saw the gunman firing towards her and her colleague. She said he aimed high, he missed, he said nothing. As soon as I realized he was shooting, we just said, get out of the building.
And let me just add an urgent bulletin from the Associated Press just crossed seconds ago. Navy officials say at least 6 are dead in the Navy Yard shooting. Now, we caution our viewers that the numbers are invariably unreliable early on. You know, it's very sketchy, the information that we get initially, and inexorably they change, but the Associated Press reporting that according to the Navy, at least 6 people are dead in the Navy Yard shooting. We have no count on the number of survivors, but obviously we saw a great many helicopters coming down on the top of the roof of 197 building at the Navy shipyards and retrieving survivors, who were people we hope had survived, and were taken to area hospitals. We heard a doctor a short time ago talking about one of the victims, but now we have confirmation from the Navy that at least 6 are dead, but that number could change. Peter Doocy standing by live with more. Peter?
And Greg, the spot where I'm standing right now, about 150 yards away from the front gate, as we're watching now, 2 white law enforcement SUVs with their sirens on, leaving. The first one actually leaving rather quickly. It looks like there are 3. I'm about 1.5 miles exactly from the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, and as this situation unfolds, and again, from where we are, we have not heard the audible all clear from the vehicle that warned people about an hour and a half ago to stay put. But so I'm about 1.5 miles away from the Rotunda, just on the other side of those far buildings, some offices, some apartments, is Nationals Park. Right now we're being told that one of the parking lots at Nationals Park, where there is a game scheduled tonight against the Atlanta Braves at 7:05, one of those parking lots is the rendezvous point where, as people are allowed to leave wherever they are sheltering in place, that's where they want families to come and meet up with their loved ones who, hopefully the loved ones who were able to make it out okay. But not a whole lot has changed with the situation. We've still got low-flying helicopters. We haven't seen any kind of a tactical operation on or near the roof in probably more than 45 minutes to an hour, but still a lot of low-flying air traffic. And then we've got some helicopters that are circling around much higher, and each intersection, the one here a block away, the one there a block away, and then this whole street is all blocked off. It's as many red and blue sirens as I'm sure were available in the area. Right along here in front of the main gate, which is bookended by a tall brick fence, we've got 2 ambulances, a red one and a white one, if we can see that, John, and they've been in place for a while, more than an hour, and initially when they first got there, before we were moved further back, I did see paramedics rushing in with stretchers. They had to get the gate, but the ambulances themselves have stayed there, and we have seen some ambulances come and go, but those 2 in particular have been there for quite a while now, So we would assume that the people who drove them here, the paramedics, the EMTs, are still working inside trying to help anybody been hurt, Greg.
And that's what we're hearing, Peter. Thank you very much. Back to Peter on the scene in just a moment. I want to go to Jennifer Griffin if she's ready to go at the Pentagon, because we're still working on some other reports in the area. Very typical that we get a variety of different reports, as we've mentioned to you. The numbers are shifting a little bit. We're hearing the Associated Press report several are dead now. At least 12 have been shot. We're working on getting some confirmation as to what their injuries are actually, what kind of injuries they have. We heard several of them are in critical condition. One woman shot in the head that was able to come out of the building. We also were able to see some of the airlifts that had taken place from the roof of this building, 197. So we're working on getting some confirmation. We're getting a variety of different reports out of the DC area. A couple things we're waiting on is this press conference from local law enforcement. We've been waiting about an hour for that press conference. Obviously a developing situation within that last hour. We heard that at least one shooter is now dead. That is being reported by the Associated Press. We're also awaiting the president at the White House, just about 2 miles away from the scene. So this is, again, it's very tough to know at the time, Greg, that we don't want to go overboard with some of the additional reports that we're getting about developing stories in the DC area, but we're working with Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon and a few of our other producers to try to see how much we can bring our viewers about this developing
And typically on the left-hand side of your screen, these news conferences are delayed simply because law enforcement is trying to gather all of their facts together. And they're trying to get the latest information. Rod Wheeler is our guy with the latest information because he's tapping his sources. Rod, what did you learn?
Well, I can confirm that there are several fatalities. I don't know the exact number. I heard that about a half an hour ago. I didn't want to report it because it wasn't confirmed yet, Greg.
Right.
There are several people still in the hospital. I have heard that there are 12 victims total. There are supposedly now just one gunman. That's what I'm being told. Although our SWAT unit, again, which is what we call our ERT unit, they're still in the building over there and they're sweeping the entire building. But there's a second building, from what I'm being told, that they're sweeping as well, just as a precaution in case there was somebody else. The reason that I'm being told that the police believe there could have been two shooters initially, Greg, is because two different types of rounds was taken from the bullet fragments was taken from some of the victims. So anytime that happens, the police department automatically alert us in law enforcement so that we know what we're dealing with. It appears to be a high-powered weapon that was used because, how do we know that? Because of some of the rounds that was used. From what I'm being told, at least an AR-15 was used.
Rod, let me stop you there. News conference is about to begin. We may get further details. Let's listen.
All right, good afternoon. We obviously have had a horrific tragedy here at the Navy Yard and the immediate area, beginning this morning about 8:20 a.m. A shooter entered building 197, which is the Naval Sea Command, and began shooting. Our MPD active shooter team responded immediately there, launched a search for the shooter, and engaged at least one person along the way. We know that there are 4 wounded that have been removed from the scene and taken to a hospital. We're still trying to confirm the number of fatalities involved, and we'll have to do that later. As far as we know, this is an isolated incident. We don't know of any other installations that are involved in this. We would ask all the residents of this area to please stay out of the area. This is an active investigation that is going on. And of course, because this involves the military and the federal government, we have been actively and directly and continuously involved with the White House about this incident, confirming what we know at this stage. I want to call upon our police chief, Catherine Lanier, now to provide additional details. She will be followed by the Park Police Chief, Teresa Chambers, and we have other law enforcement officials here with us. Understand we're not prepared to answer a lot of questions at this stage because this is a continuing active investigation, and we will reconvene at some point later this afternoon as more information is available to us. Chief Padilla.
So obviously at this point it's still very preliminary. I'll give you what it is that we do have right now, and there's still a lot of work to be done. We won't be taking questions right now. We will be doing another briefing within the next 2 hours. We'll give locations for that briefing. Right now what I can tell you is our initial call came in for a shooting on the Navy Yard. It came in shortly after 8:15. There was a request for Metropolitan Police Department assistance. Our units were on the scene. Active shooter teams were deployed and actually deployed on base within 7 minutes of the first call coming in. Multiple active shooter teams from the Metropolitan Police Department, Park Police, U.S. Marshals, eventually also FBI, have been inside the base since that time. Right now, and this is very, very preliminary, we have one MPD officer who was shot in engagement with the shooter inside of the Navy Yard. We have one shooter that we believed involved in this that is deceased. We also have other casualties. I will not give a confirmed number this time, but I'd say we have multiple victims inside that are deceased. We will give updates once we have those numbers confirmed. The big concern for us right now is that we potentially have 2 other shooters that we have not located at this point. So right now, all we have on those potential other shooters, and this is not confirmed, we potentially may have 2 additional shooters out there. One being a white male who was last seen around 8:35, 8:40 this morning in a khaki tan military uniform, short sleeve with a beret hat, appeared to be like a naval uniform. That white male was last seen around 8:35 this morning with a handgun. We also have a lookout potentially for another shooter involved. That was a black male, approximately 50 years of age, who may have been in possession of a long gun. That person was wearing an olive drab colored, possible military style uniform. We have no information to believe that either of those folks are military personnel, but we do have information that those individuals are wearing military style uniforms. So anybody that has information that may have seen someone matching those descriptions, we are asking for them to call the Metropolitan Police Department on 202-727-9099. So in terms of the investigation, it is still very active. We have asked our members of the community to please remain out of the area and in their homes until we finish doing a search. Obviously, we've got a large area here that we're still actively engaged in a search on. So with that, I just want to thank all the other agencies that have been here. This is a very active, ongoing, unified investigation at this point. The FBI has been here fully engaged from the very beginning, along with Park Police, Metro Transit Police, DOD, Naval Criminal Intelligence. So we've had everybody here along with us all along. As soon as we get additional information, we certainly will push it out. I will let Chief Chambers give her an opportunity if she has any comments from Park Police. Our officer is stable condition right now in surgery.
The only thing to add, we were with the MPD very quickly on the scene, and that happens a lot in Washington, D.C. And of course, we have our aviation component that is helping with still eyes in the sky, as well as medevac. And again, we'll be a part of this ongoing and fluid investigation, and we'll be back with you later today. Thank you.
Is there any indication that this is an act of terrorism? Is there any indication that this is an act of terrorism?
We really are not prepared to answer questions at this stage. We'll be back in a couple of hours as we gather more information. We certainly don't want to provide information that hasn't been confirmed, so please bear with us as we continue this investigation, and in a couple of hours I'm sure we'll have more. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, you heard the question there, was this an act of terrorism? And maybe it was answered initially when it was said that this is an isolated incident. Active shooter teams deployed within 7 minutes, 4 wounded. Nobody's saying about the number of fatalities, which is wise at this point. Obviously, a Metropolitan Police officer engaged the shooter, one shooter dead. He was shot. He's in stable condition, the police officer. Potentially, though, this is the headline, there could be 2 other shooters out there, a white male and a black male with a long gun.
Jennifer Griffin is standing by at the Pentagon with some new information for us now. Jennifer?
Well, Jenna, we have confirmed with Navy officials what Kathy Lanier, the police department chief, has just said, that the one shooter is dead. That was the African-American who was described as the 6-foot-tall, bald, wearing a dark outfit. He had with him at least one an AR-15 rifle. Now we know from police officials that they are actively looking for 2 other possible suspects who could have been involved in this incident. One of them is described as a white male, last seen at 8:35 a.m. wearing a military uniform and a beret. They have no indication that this man was a member of the military, but dressed in military garb. The second suspect that they're also actively searching for right now is a black man, age 50, carrying a long gun, according to Police Chief Kathy Lanier, wearing olive drab uniform, possibly military-style uniform. Again, no indication that these 3 individuals who took part in the shooting, the other 2 alleged to have taken part in the shooting, that they were members of the military. They did manage to get onto the base. They did have at least 2 long guns with them. But again, that one shooter we had confirmed earlier was dead in Building 197. It's not clear whether he took his life or whether he was shot by the authorities. Jenna?
Here we are now taking this in. Again, another report of these 2 additional shooters potentially, although we have it unconfirmed at this time whether or not there were indeed other shooters. Jen, Greg just mentioned it. We heard the question shouted to law enforcement. I'm just curious, at the Pentagon, is there any discussion about any sort of motive being terrorism?
There's no discussion right now of motive. This is moving very quickly. In fact, there were reports just within the last hour that there was another shooting, possible shooting, over at Andrews Air Force Base in Anacostia. We can now confirm that there was no shooting that took place. We've talked to the spokesman over at Andrews Air Force Base. Those were misleading reports that came out. It just shows how jumpy everyone is right now. They thought that there were shots heard on Andrews Air Force Base. They took precautions, but again, that they have given an all clear, and there was no shooting at that second base. But it is very worrisome that there are these 2 suspects who are on the loose right now. They're asking for the public's help in trying to locate them. One is a white male wearing a military-style uniform and beret, last seen at 8:35 near near the Naval Yard down in Southeast DC. Then there's also a black male, approximate age 50, also dressed in olive drab military-style uniform. No indication that these are military members. He is carrying a long gun, and they are very worried about these 2 individuals. So an active pursuit right now for these 2 individuals, even though the one shooter who took the lives of several people, we're told, at the Navy base is dead.
Yeah, we are now receiving confirmation from our Capitol Hill producer that indeed the shooter referred to in the news conference is in fact dead, though we have no confirmation on a second or a third shooter who may still be at large, which was also mentioned at the news conference. Jennifer, your thoughts, though, based on the background information you're getting from your sources there, when the question was posed, is this an act of terrorism? There was no response, though early in the news conference it was said that this is an isolated incident, not that the 2 are related. But any information?
Right now, I don't think anybody wants to get into the motive behind this attack. It is certainly a different situation if you're talking about a lone gunman versus multiple suspects involved. The fact that there is a manhunt right now for 2 other individuals announced right now by the police chief in Washington, that raises other issues, but it is much too early to talk about a motive in this attack, Greg.
Indeed. All right.
So certainly a lot of questions still are unanswered at this point. If we could, if you're just joining us, we want to make sure that we're recapping this for you. What you see on your screen there is a map of the area in Washington, D.C. where this has taken place. The Navy Yard is approximately a little over 2.5 miles from the White House, where we expect to hear from the president shortly. His briefing has been pushed a little bit, and he's expected to speak shortly from now. We were expecting him about a half an hour ago. That, of course, is slid because of what has transpired in this Navy Yard. Also, we just got that press briefing from local law enforcement that told us that new information about 2 shooters that are potentially on the loose, as Jennifer Griffin confirmed. That's what they're looking for, suspects at this time. So what actually transpired inside the building is still something we're trying to piece together this morning at 8:20 when shots rang out at the Navy Yard. And joining us with more information now is someone that not only worked in the Navy, but also has friends inside the building. His name is Commander Kirk Lippold. He's the former commander of the USS Cole. And Commander, just tell us a little bit about your morning so far and the folks that you were able to get in touch with inside the building 197.
Well, first thing, when I heard about the shooting this morning on the local news, tuned in, started listening, realized it was at the Navy Yard, knew that I had friends working at what we call the Naval Sea Systems Commands that is responsible for building ships in the Navy. So I just texted them, how are you guys doing? Are you safe? Heard there's a shooter on the Navy Yard. Text I got back was that the shooter was in their building, that they are taking a sheltering in place, that shots had been fired, and they were told to remain still. Talked with a Naval Academy classmate of mine who told me that he actually had bullet holes in his office but was able to get out safely. He's hunkered down. They've now since been able to get together their 2 groups. They still have people that are unaccounted for in the building, but the building itself, when you look at it, is not just an easy facility to get into.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Why?
Well, when you get onto the Navy Yard itself, you have to show some form of identification to the guards at the gate that divides from the civilian side to the military side. Usually, if you have a proper identification and can vouch for the ID of those that may be with you, they will allow you to go in. Although they're random vehicle inspections, chances are that on a Monday morning for the routine work day, they aren't going to be doing that. So clearly they got on base, found a place to park the car, and at that point, the one or hopefully not, but maybe multiple shooters got out, armed up, and when you go to the front door in this building and you walk in, it is not just you show an ID and walk in. You have to actually be cleared to enter that building. You show your badge through security or swipe it at a turnstile to get access to the interior of the building. Or someone meets you down there, grants you access, signs you through a verification process to get in. From what the initial reports are beginning to say, clearly the shooter either right before he entered the building or just as he entered the building, knowing that he wasn't cleared to get in, began shooting and then worked his way up. These friends of mine are up on the 4th floor, 3rd or 4th floor, so either the shooter shot his way up going floor by floor and killing and wounding a number of people, and I think we're waiting to see. As Chief Lanier from the DC Police just said, it's an active investigation and we're still trying to lock down and find out were there 2 other shooters and where are they located on the Navy Yard itself.
I can't imagine what was going through your mind hearing this from your friends this morning.
These are just absolute tragedies, whether it's a criminal act by one person or whether this turns out to be a little bit worse as an act of domestic terrorism. You know, my first thoughts and prayers go out to those that were shot and wounded in this terrible attack, those that are going to be affected just by having been around it. And I think that we as a nation need to pull together at this point, extend those thoughts and prayers to their families, because many of them right now are waiting and wondering, just like they did when my ship was attacked.
Commander, you talked to your friends who were inside that building when the gunfire broke out. Did they describe more specifically what it was like? I mean, you talked to one friend who said he had bullet holes in his office. What more did he tell you?
Well, I actually wasn't talking. It was just via texting, because I don't know if they were not even in a position to make any noise if they've still got a shooter running loose around. So we were texting back and forth, but that's all I know. Is he said he has multiple gunshot holes into his office, but was able to get out of there alive and get to a place where they could shelter in place, stay quiet, stay safe until they were given the all clear.
Commander Lippold, based on your experience in the Navy, there's been a lot questions surrounding what actually takes place in this building. And we know generically that there's some defense contractors and engineers that are working on shipbuilding and weapons procurement. Can you tell us a little bit about what actually goes on in the 3rd and 4th floors of the building where we believe that the shooting took place?
Absolutely. The building itself is set up where you have a number of offices. They're divided like cubicles, like you'd see pretty much in any office. Many of them have secure access to them, meaning that they have classified information where it is an open container and people are allowed to keep it on their desks. Others are more secure, where you have to have specific clearance to get in and have knowledge of certain weapons programs or certain ship design parameters as they're being built. But these all work together and function because this is where the Navy truly builds the future of the fleet and many of the weapon systems that are used out there on Navy ships, on Navy submarines, so that we can keep the nation safe.
Commander, you talked at length about the protections and the restrictions about entering the Navy shipyard, and we're looking at a map right now. Given the fact that somebody was able to get in there with a gun, maybe a long gun, maybe an automatic weapon, what, if anything, does that tell you about the shooter?
Well, I think that it was clearly, by that individual so far, a well thought out and well planned execution of a mission where he sought to do as much carnage and as much harm as possible in as short a time span, knowing that he may be giving up his life. We still have to wait and see. Or at least willing to go in there and begin to take out as many of his fellow citizens as possible. I mean, it's just tragic what has happened right now. But again, he is not going to get into that building just by waltzing in and showing an ID and walking in, opening up and shooting. He clearly had planned this out to shoot his way into the building, to get to the inside, and then be able to respond to work his way up multiple floors, shooting all the while, taking down other people.
You're giving us some really invaluable information, Commander. We really appreciate it. We just received the 2-minute warning from the President, so I hope to pop up that picture on the screen for our viewers because we've been awaiting the Commander-in-Chief. And his news conference that was supposed to be, I shouldn't call it a news conference, he was going to make a press announcement about the economy today. Here we are 5 years since Lehman Brothers collapsed, and that was the plan today. Potentially maybe an announcement about who might be the next Fed chairman, and these are issues right now that are the furthest things from our mind today as this news has developed. So when we do see the President step to the microphone, we'll go there at the White House, a little more than 2.5 miles away from the scene. Commander, if you could go back to what your friends saw, heard, what is their state now? Are they also safe at this time? I don't know if Commander Lippold can still hear me. Apparently not. All right, we'll work on that. So again, just to recap, Commander Lippold was getting text messages from his friends. Here's this guy who served the country, has obviously survived a terrorist attack on his ship as former commander of the USS Cole, and now is getting text messages from his friends inside the building that were sheltering in place and seeing bullets come through their office. So we want to make sure that his friends are okay and also glean any more information as we can from the commander if we can get him back.
We would expect the Commander-in-Chief momentarily to mention this incident, to talk about it probably at the outset. But just so you know, this was a planned address by the President, which is essentially 5 years from the anniversary of, one doesn't really call it an anniversary, do they? Because it was so horrific, of the financial meltdown. And here is the President about to step to the podium in a moment now. He's going to be talking about all the jobs that have been gained over the course of the last 5 years. But remember, the labor participation rate is the lowest in 35 years. So the unemployment number, 7.3%, may belie the true statistics of what it's really like out there, that there are more than 20 million Americans who are unemployed and underemployed, and so many people have simply dropped out. Here is the President of the United States.
Please have a seat. Before I begin, let me say a few words about the tragedy that's unfolding not far away from here at the Washington Navy Yard. That's part of why our event today was delayed. I've been briefed by my team on the situation. We still don't know all the facts, but we do know that several people have been shot and some have been killed. So we are confronting yet another mass shooting. And today it happened on a military installation in our nation's capital. It's a shooting that targeted our military and civilian personnel. These are men and women who were going to work, doing their job, protecting all of us. They're patriots, and they know the dangers of serving abroad, but today they face the unimaginable violence that they wouldn't have expected here at home. So we offer our gratitude to the Navy and local law enforcement, federal authorities, and the doctors who've responded with skill and bravery. I've made it clear to my team that I want the investigation to be seamless so that federal and local authorities are working together. And as this investigation moves forward, we will do everything in our power to make sure whoever carried out this cowardly act is held responsible. In the meantime, we send our thoughts and prayers to all at the Navy Yard who've been touched by this tragedy. We thank them for their service. We stand with the families of those who've been harmed. They're going to need our love and support. And as we learn more about the courageous Americans who died today,